Hey folks, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I thought I'd chat to you a bit about how knitting is a tool in my mental health toolbox. Hey folks, if you're new here, I'm Dawn. This is Tangled Together, where I talk about my knitting hobby and the other things in life that get tangled up in it. I have a project with me. It's the tiniest hat. No, it is the toe of a sock that I am knitting up, and I thought I'd sit here and knit and chat to you about how knitting is good for your brain, or at least good for my brain. For anyone who's wondering, the sweater that I'm wearing today is my book club cardigan, knit up in Knit Picks, Simply Wool in Winkle, I want to say, and the buttons are from Holland Hoof. So quick disclaimer, knitting is not a replacement for therapy or medication or any other form of professional support. If you're having serious mental health issues, seek out a professional. But there are things, there have been studies, and I've read a couple of articles about the ways that knitting is good for your brain. And anecdotally, I find knitting is a good, tool for me to use when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling anxious, to recenter myself in a similar way that meditation does. And I've heard that from other people as well. Just wanted to put that out there. If you are struggling, get help. So a little bit about me as far as mental stuff goes. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was fairly young, fairly early elementary school. And I've struggled with anxiety and depression and maybe have a bit of ADD or something mixed in. It's hard to tell because there is a lot of overlap with dyslexia and ADD and autism, but it's hard to always tell which is which thing. And also I've learned how to deal with the dyslexia enough that I've developed enough coping mechanisms that I think the things that maybe are ADD or autism spectrum, aren't that much of a problem to warrant getting officially diagnosed, especially as a millennial woman. We didn't get diagnosed with stuff a lot as a kid. So yeah, I definitely have dyslexia. I have anxiety. I may have something else sprinkled in there, but I'm in that neurodivergent bundle. And yes, so I've always been somebody who, I like having my hands busy. I like kind of multitasking, I find it easier to sit still and concentrate on stuff if I have something I'm also doing, to kind of keep different parts of my brain active. And it also has provided a really good, visible sense of progress. And then a big thing for me postpartum dealing with, I had some postpartum anxiety that was showing itself in rage outbursts, which I'd never really dealt with before, and was what is going on? Oh, it's all the hormones with postpartum stuff. And some stuff that I hadn't worked through, that I went to therapy and got help with that. But then also knitting provided me with a community. I sought out a local knitting group and started going to that. But there are other benefits to knitting that I'm going to get into in a moment, that I feel are definitely a good toolkit in my mental health toolbox. Okay, and a bunch of these are science-backed. I'll try and put links to some articles and papers in the description. But the first one I want to talk about is that knitting reduces stress and anxiety. So there have been studies that find that repetitive hand movements can activate the body's relaxation response. So something like knitting. It can be similar to like mindfulness or meditation, especially once you've picked up the skill and you kind of don't actively have to think about it. Especially like right now I'm doing a stockinette sock. So it's just doing the same motion over and over and over. And there are definitely times where I don't have, I'm watching a show and the episode ends and I just sit and I knit for a couple of minutes, just focusing on my knitting. Or I'll be outside or wherever I am and take a couple of minutes to just knit and concentrate on that. And a lot of knitters talk about like feeling calmer after knitting. For me, it helps me get out of my head and get back into my body. Like when I am feeling anxious or I am feeling just kind of stuck, because I can pay attention to the sensory input. I can pay attention to how the yarn feels, how the needles feel, the sound of it, the way the muscles are moving. And also because I'm using my body, I feel like I'm a little bit more aware and can tune myself into like, oh, I'm holding my shoulders really tight right now. I should relax them. And you can even see it sometimes in your tension. If you're really feeling really anxious or stressed, your tension might get too tight. And it's like, oh, okay, let's calm down. Let's relax a little bit and get back to the normal tension. Another thing is that you can get into kind of like a flow with knitting. So in addition to that, like mindfulness, there is this like flow of, okay, I'm really focused on what I'm doing. I find that happens less when I'm working on stockinette and more when I'm working on a project that like requires my attention. So like, or like kind of in that just enough attention where it's not challenging, but enough like color work or lace or something where I do have to be a little bit more concentrated on what's going on. That's the kind of thing that like you get into that flow and it's like, oh, I'll just do one more row. And the next thing you know, it's like an hour later and you're like, oh, oops. But like that can be really helpful. I find that's helpful when I am feeling anxious, and just as a way to like give my brain a break. I can concentrate on this other thing and my brain's not actively like mulling over whatever it is that's giving me anxiety. Sometimes it actually helps me like work through it in a way because I feel like my brain is passively working through whatever problem it is. And it's like I often will do this when I'm writing. If I run into an issue with my writing and where I'm like, I'm just in a block. I can't figure out how to make this scene work. I'll go take a walk. I'll get up and like move and change my environment a little bit. And I find like going for walks, there's just enough, I can kind of be thinking about it, but there's just enough other things that I can get distracted and let my brain kind of process in the background. So yeah, that's something that knitting can allow you to kind of get into that flow state where, and that can be very restorative. As I mentioned earlier, knitting also provides a great sense of accomplishment. Completing a couple of rows or sleeve or an entire garment, like it provides you with that measurable progress and, like little dopamine hits, for look, I did the thing. Yay. I want to start doing something that I've seen a few people talk about, which is like putting in more progress markers, not just tracking like increases and stuff like that, but like putting in a progress marker and then a couple days later looking back and seeing how far I've knit. I feel like especially for projects that have a lot of stockinette, or like I'm working the body of a sweater and it is in like a tight gauge or a lower weight or it's going to take a long time to work on that, like that can help provide a little bit more of the, look, I did the thing, I made progress, and not just looking at it and being like, I feel like I haven't done anything. And like when the rest of my life feels messy, or, you know, as a parent, when you're in that situation of like, I did the dishes, I did the laundry, I cleaned the house, and now there are dirty dishes and laundry and the house needs to get cleaned, where there are these like repetitive, it never ends tasks. It's nice to have something to look at and be like, here's the progress. Here's the progress I can say I did today that is measurable, that is tangible. Because also, like, if you've got a more like data-driven job or something where you don't have that tangible, aha, this is the thing I did today, that can be so good for your brain sometimes. For me, knitting helps create these like structures and routines. I've got the routine of my Tuesday night knitting group and going most Sundays as well to go grab coffee and knit and hang out. But beyond that, it also creates this routine of I always knit in the evening, kind of like we do our closing duties around the house and the kiddos down for bed, and then I can sit down, we can watch something together, and I can knit. And I feel like my body picks up on the, oh, you're sitting down, you got your knitting out, the lights are dimmed a little bit, now's the time to relax. So in the same way that like some people will drink a specific cup of tea before bed or read a book, the physicality of picking up your knitting and knitting can provide that like physical cue to your body that, hey, it's time to relax. Or whatever it is that you associate with knitting. And then I touched on this a little bit already, and I've talked about it in my like third space video, but I feel like knitting can provide this really great sense of community and that like space outside work and home where you can have these connections. That has been very much something for me with going to knitting meetups, and even just local yarn stores can be great places to meet people, where it's this like low pressure type thing too, because I feel like there are some other opportunities for meetups where it's like, oh gosh, I have to like go and be super social or stuff like that. And like, I'm not a super social person. I'm much more introverted. I make videos, but I'm just here in my room talking to a camera with my dogs hanging out. So, and like, I like talking to people, but I find getting into those conversations difficult. So knitting has helped provide that, because it allows for the like, oh, hey, what are you knitting? Oh, who are you knitting that for? Oh, tell me about that. It like helps provide that social lubrication. And I feel like that's something that like that genuine person to person human connection can be very good for your mental health. You know, provide it, you feel a lot less alone. There's a community. When I recently like had my surgery, I told a number of folks in the knitting group about it, and almost all of them were like, hey, if you need anything, let us know, you know, offered like to help with childcare and stuff like that. And just knowing that there was that support there if we needed it took so much anxiety off of that whole experience. So yeah, just like having a great way to meet and build community that's low pressure, and something that like brings people together. Also, it's great for your mental health. Like, you're not only, once you've learned knitting, but like each pattern is a new learning experience, because you're needing to follow the instructions and translate what's written in Word into a physical object and figure it out, learning new techniques, all of these things. And I think I've also read that like knitting is one of those things that activates like across your brain. So it can be really good for maintaining like mental capabilities and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe that's something I'll dig into more in the future. But definitely like learning new skills and even just needing to learn and understand a new pattern is good for your brain. It gives your brain exercise and keeps it healthier. Exercise is good for you. Okay, so how do I apply all of this to knitting being a mental tool in my mental toolbox? I pretty much always now have a project on the go. I have had times in the past where I've paused knitting, and looking back on it, I usually had dips in my mental health when that, like around the same time. I haven't dug that far in to be like, was the dip happening and then I set the knitting aside, or did the knitting get set aside and then the dip happened? Like, I don't think they're directly related, but there's some kind of connection there. And especially I try and keep projects that are going to be easy in a way. Like I used to be a monogamous knitter. But I think the couple times that I set projects down, it was because I ran into something difficult and I was already stressed out in my life, so I didn't want my hobby to be stressful. And probably had I just been like, I'm going to set this project down and I'm going to switch to something a little bit easier for a little bit, I would have continued knitting, but I didn't. So now that's something that I try and do. I try and have like and it's very easy for me with having a kid now because I try and have a easy on the go project to take with me to playgrounds and school pickup and all sorts of places, appointments where I find myself sitting with a couple of minutes and I can pull out my knitting and keep myself occupied and also watch the kiddo on the playground. But then I also like to have a little bit more complicated project that I can work on in the evening and focus a little bit more on. Knitting's also a good, like, screen-free wind down for me. I'm not a huge fan of audiobooks. I wish I was. But I've been getting a little bit more into I've been listening to the third campaign of Critical Role, and I'm about 40, maybe 50 episodes in. We had been watching it, but again, like trying to watch a 3-hour stream every week when we had an infant was at times very difficult, and then we fell way behind. So that has been really great, like to have something I'm listening to and then knitting, or I'll go outside and I'll sit and I'll knit. So just an opportunity for me to not just be on my phone, but winding down. I go to knitting meetups. I go and hang out. We've got one that happens at a brewery every week, and then we go to a coffee shop on most weekends, and so I get to chat with the friends that I've made through that group. I get to meet new people. I've learned so much because of going to those groups. Like, I learned about knitting YouTube, and I've learned new techniques and understood why certain things work just from talking to people, as well as just gotten to learn about other cool folks and have people that I can talk to about the things that are going on in my life. Because I am somebody who I process things oftentimes by talking through them, or like talking through stuff helps me process, however you want to put that. So just having people that I can like vent to, and also like the couple of parents that are in the group where we can be like, yeah, same, I get you. Or other folks just with like work stress or life stress, and having somebody I can talk to about that. Or at times just go and listen to everybody else's lives and be able to enjoy and celebrate with them when they have successes and commiserate with them when their life is stressful. And knitting has also been this really great opportunity for me to feel productive and focus on slow productivity. I think that's another thing that I haven't really touched on, but like in a way it causes me to slow down because knitting takes time. It's not going to be an instant, boom, ta-da, I have a sock in an evening. Like there's a speed to it. And I'm not somebody who feels like I need to knit faster. There are definitely times where I do knit faster without realizing it. But it is a slow productivity where I get the benefits of slowing down and focusing on the process while also having measurable success. The sun has come out. So there you go. That's some of my maybe a little bit rambly thoughts on knitting and my mental health, how it's beneficial for me, the ways it's definitely helped me, and maybe you feel the same, or you might have realized, oh, that's why that feels that way. I know for me, reading a couple articles about like research into knitting's effects on the brain and knitting's effects on health has been like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. I also feel that way. So yeah, I feel like having a creative hobby is so great. There are so many benefits to it. And knitting is creative. It's a different kind of creative maybe than painting or stuff like that. But you are making choices. You're creating even if you're following the pattern perfectly, using the same yarn and the same needles and meat gauge and everything, the object that you created is unique and you created it. Knitting isn't going to be a cure-all, but it can be very useful. It can be something that you turn to when you do need those moments of stress relief. It can be something to alleviate boredom. It can help build community. It's a tool, and how you use it is really going to direct what impact it has. Bless you. So I'd love to know I'd love it if you'd stop sneezing. I bet you would too. What are you sneezing about? What's your sneezy? A little sneezing void in the background. So I'd love to hear from you. How do you feel like knitting impacts your mental well-being? Is it something that you do because it brings you community? Does it give you something productive to do? Is it meditative? What benefits do you get out of it? And if you've got any like great articles or stuff like that about knitting and mental health or physical health, let me know. I always enjoy reading those. And I'll put a few of those down in the description that I've found and really enjoyed. And if you haven't seen in my last couple of videos, I now have a Patreon. Thank you so much, patrons, for helping to support this channel. So if you want to head on over to my Patreon, you can check out some perks like getting your name in videos, getting access to videos a little bit early, as well as like a monthly roundup of cool stuff I find and want to share, knitting and otherwise. If you want to keep up with some of my more day-to-day stuff, you can follow me on Instagram and check out the projects that I'm knitting on Ravelry. Thank you so much for spending your time here with me. It means so much. And I hope that you are doing well, you're taking care of your mental and physical health, and yeah, I'd also love to know if you don't have anything like mental health to add. Were you knitting anything along with me? I made some progress on this sock toe, so yay. Okay, bye. Someplace I call